G'day, welcome to Drunk Crafter. Today I'm going to do something that I haven't really seen any other YouTubers do, which is look at the evolution of a basic idea through to a completed design. I've made a few videos now of myself sorting chest rooms using the new items, the hoppers and droppers and comparators in Minecraft 1.5. So I just wanted to show how I got to that point. The first thing that I did when looking at the new items in 1.5 was I decided it'd be useful to try and use the weighted pressure plates, which I've got one down under some water down there, to see how they worked. Played around a little bit with a string of glowstone lamps and some redstone with a weighted pressure plate next to it, just seeing how many items I had to throw on for it to light up. And the first use that I thought of was for a shop, where I could use the heavier weighted pressure plate and throw items in, like a stack of items, and have that send a signal to a dropper or a dispenser, so that, say, if I put, see here, 64 cobble, drop that in, slides down the water, goes over a fence post which has the pressure plate on it, then drops down further. That's told a dispenser behind here to spit out 2 iron. Works reasonably simply. Just takes a signal from that. If it's less than, I think, 46 of an item, it only sends the signal 1 block. When it's more than that, it goes 2. So when it goes that distance, it reaches the repeater, which sets off a noise. And then I've got 2 loops that go around to the dispenser so that it shoots the dispenser twice to get you 2 iron ingots. Just so it goes once there, then takes a little bit longer to go around again. Then I also made my first use of a hopper, having that underneath the fence post, so that the items drops onto the pressure plate, then through the fence post, down into the dropper and into a chest. I thought that was a reasonably good use of the new items, but you could only really use it for a lower value item that you want it to, to pay for. If you had something like diamonds in there, and you wanted people to pay, say, a stack of iron, there's no way with this design at the moment for it to know that you've put iron in. You could have just put 64 dirt and gotten the diamond out. And that's not really going to work terribly well on a server. So I went and had a look at how other people had made shops after I'd done this one. The first thing that I found was that I don't actually have to drop items straight down into a pit to get them to go to a hopper. You can set it up with slabs so that you just throw the item which is above a hopper and it just goes straight through the slab, which is pretty cool. But apart from using pressure plates like I had before, I didn't know how to get a hopper to output a signal so that you could have it spit items back out. So it was useful in some ways, but I still needed to learn how to do that. So I was still looking at trying to build a shop that knew what items you were throwing in so that it would output the correct item. What I found next was the way to get a hopper to only select a certain item, which was basically just building something like this. Torch there, repeater. The first time that I used a comparator, well, that actually made it do something anyway. And then a couple of hoppers. So the way that this works is when this hopper outputs a signal, it goes through the comparator, down the redstone, back through the repeater, through the block to the torch, which switches off for a moment and lets an item come through to this hopper, which can then go through a chain of other hoppers or to a chest, however you want to have it set up. The way to make it output the signal is that when there's more than 22 items in one, it starts pulsing the signal. So if I put more than 22 in there, it's just going to go through those until I've got my 21, and there'll be one left here. It's 22 in total. I can also do this if I put red wool in. It'll go through the red wool until there's just the one left. But at the same time, it's letting cobblestone through if I put that in there as well. What I want it to do is only let red wool through. So I'll put one red wool at this end, keep my 21 cobble, put singles into the middle ones to fill those holes, and 18 in the end. Now, when I get my cobble back, my red wool back, if I put that in, it lets red wool in. But if I were to, I can't put any other items in there. So anything else, if there was a water stream going over this, would just pass straight over. It wouldn't be able to come through the hopper. So it's only letting the red wool come through. And this can be used to separate the items that you want. I figured that the obvious use for this would be to pass water over a number of these sorters, drop items in at the top of the stream, let it pass over so that selected items get sorted out and pass through to chests. So I worked out that by alternating the direction of these, I could fit them next to each other, otherwise they'd be interfering. And I guess that's still iron. And that'll sort the items. I then also sort of learnt about putting the correct direction on hoppers to make them go where you want. Always making sure that you're working back from the end position that you want the hoppers to take items to. So this system, working with diamonds, gold ingots and iron ingots, will only let those through. Which will put things coming down. I'm getting my diamonds, my gold and my iron. The only problem that I could see with this was that because I was having them right next to each other, you can't put different chests next to each other. So I had to have them staggered, and I didn't like the look of that. So I decided that I needed to build something that looked like a normal chest room that I use, which is usually with a 3 wide floor and then double chests along each side, sort of down a corridor, and see how I could get the system to work with that. So here we have a chest room just like I described. It'll take cobble, smooth stone, different woods, sand and dirt. Comes through to double chests. You can see the hopper behind, so it's feeding into the back of the chests. And at the time I didn't really realise that droppers could fire upwards, so I could only see that feeding it from the top, sort of the only way that I could make it work. Probably works better if I throw it down the hole. Which led us to this bad boy. So I've got the water going over a number of hoppers for the item sorters, dropping down because I need a lot of space to get my 8 chests worth. once they've been sorted out, they then go through chains of more hoppers using gravity coming down all the time to then go into the chests. I was having problems though that if I chucked multiple stacks of the same item, because there's only the one free space in the top hopper for the item that you want to come in, I can still fit another 63 of those in at any time, but once you're throwing in more than one stack, the excess just goes straight over the top and was going down to the end. So I figured that I needed to have a looping system for it to go back around, and that's when I discovered that droppers could fire upwards. So I made a pulsing circuit that could be switched on and off. Had my stack of torches on blocks next to the droppers. Had that going up, then shooting out at a right angle into more water, flowing back down and around. That worked pretty well, but I then realised that I didn't actually need to do this or have it dropping down there. If I'd used ice for the spaces in between, and then when there was at the end of a 8 block length of water, I could have a sign, then let the item slide over ice and then more water. I could just have it one level and just going all the way around. So I decided to build that, which we have here. See how the water starts, goes along over the top of different hoppers with ice in between, using a sign at a space where there's ice, because the items will slide across the ice, but if it was where a hopper was, they'd stop dead. Then get taken up by more water so that they can go around. And this one I made it so that you could throw them in from inside the chest room, a much wider chest room than I'm normally used to working with. Tried a couple of different ways of setting it up. On this side I had a 1 block space in between each of the sorters, but if you look from underneath, here first, you can see how all of the droppers are spaced by 2 going up into the chests, apart from that one because it goes into the other end of that one. But these are all spaced by 1, which made it really messy from underneath, with all of the hoppers running to where they needed to be. The other side, I worked out that it was much better to actually build the sorters in line with those, so that all of the hoppers are just running in a straight line over here. I also decided at the time that it would be cool to have a chicken farm that could throw eggs back up into itself. Uses pretty much exactly the same design. At one end it's taking out raw chicken, cooked chicken in case you're using a sword with flame, takes out feathers, and then I set up another sorting system to take out eggs, but I found out that when you set it up this way, eggs are one item that don't actually stay in there, they just pass straight through. The reason that this is full at the moment is that everything below it is full of eggs, so they build up, and they're probably, that water behind here is probably full of eggs. Just used another pulsing circuit to then it lets them through up again and up to a dispenser which throws them out. I then thought that it would be really cool to combine that design and this design so that you could have the raw chicken or your cooked chicken come into your chest room. But in order to do that, it would need to be cooked, so you'd need a furnace, which led to the next leg. So this one's a little bit different. We've got the chest room here, which is basically the same as that last one that we've looked at. The hole in the middle isn't to throw the items down though. That's an access hole that goes down to the sorting room. But while we're up here, next to this I've set up a chicken farm, which is basically the same as the one over there. It'll put the eggs getting thrown back in and also pull the raw chicken out, which comes down here. And I've got a furnace section where the item to be cooked or smelted in the furnace comes up to the top. Then from a hopper goes into the top of the furnace. You've got coal coming in from the side of the furnace, the way that that's pointing, and then the furnace outputs down through another dropper, which goes into the chest room. But the way that I wanted to build this was, instead of having the sorting section up on the surface, I wanted to try making it something that could be useful for mining, so that you could build your sorting system down at the mine level, and then have it do pretty much everything for you. If I could find where to get up. So the basic idea would be that while you're mining, because your branch mine keeps getting further and further away, you could just build one track going to where you need it to go to. So you could do your mining, then you fill your chest minecart. You can either do it by shift clicking all your items into a chest, which drops down through a hopper into the minecart, or really you could just shift click everything from there. But they won't get sorted out, so I won't put them in there. Then once that's full, send the minecart, goes back to your sorting system. You'd also probably run a button for turning the sorting system on. You can either have it go to send you cobble, so that it'll just end up going into a chest for cobble, or by changing the points on the track, have it come to the other side, and all the cobble then will go up to the furnaces to be smelted. I thought that I was making it a little bit more organised by having groups of 4 stacks of droppers taking items up, and then just running from my sorters, running hoppers out and around to each of the dropper stacks. But as you can see, it gets a little bit complicated at one end, whereas the other end they're sort of a bit more spaced out. But it worked, and this was all on one level, and to fit enough sorting hoppers in without making the entire loop far too long, I did end up having to come around the corner and then run that around, and gets all rather complicated. But it worked pretty cool. It's not fast, and you wouldn't want to really build this design in survival, because that is a lot of hoppers. Plus all the ones that are on the surface, that's a lot of iron. But it was a design that a couple of friends and I decided that we would try and build in survival once the server that we play on gets restarted. But we thought that maybe I should try and refine the design a little bit more. I almost forgot. In order to be able to smelt items, I needed to be able to get coal up to the furnaces. I wanted to be able to do this by sorting the coal down in the sorting section, sending it up, and then having it get divided evenly between the number of furnaces that I've got, which is 4 in this case. I tried a number of different ways to do it. The best idea that I could think of initially was to use pistons that are covering sticky pistons with a block that are covering holes with hoppers underneath, which I've got here, 4 in this design, and then have a clock that sends a signal from each side to a different piston, so that one opens, closes, another opens, closes, and so on. Initially I had 3 with water coming down from one side, but I found that, I don't know if it was the timing of the clock or because of the direction of the current, basically I'd get a lot of items going to one side, about half as many to another side, and the third side wouldn't get any items passing through it. So I tried changing the direction. Instead of having the water going that way, having it come this way, just in case it was to do with that, but I was still getting the same problem. I then tried putting the water on top and having them pull off to the side. That didn't work. I thought that maybe if there wasn't a current already there, they'd push them off to the sides more evenly. I tried varying the speed of that clock. I tried varying the speed of the clock that was powering the dropper, speeding them in. Just couldn't get it to work well. But then friend Dougal suggested that maybe it'd be good to run a minecart over the top of some droppers. I thought, that's a genius idea actually, that'll work really well. The only thing was I needed to be able to fill the minecart first, because if I had a dropper over the top of this, feeding it in every time that the cart went around, as it went past it'd only feed one in, then the cart would continue around and drop 1, 2, 3, 4, come around, pick up another 1. So every revolution it's going to end up with 3 less than it started with, even though it is getting refilled. You could fix that by having 4 hoppers on this side feeding into it, but then you need to be able to get the coal to go into the 4 hoppers. So what I came up with was feeding the coal in down off on a separate channel of track, having points again like I had on down the bottom, and then having a button so that you could power the end, which would shoot the cart out onto the loop, goes around and around and around. Then when you want to turn it off, you press another button and it changes the point so that the cart comes back into here. Because this power was on a button, that's turned off, so the cart will stop right underneath the hopper and start getting filled again. Okay, so it works pretty well. If you put some coal up into the hopper, that's going down into the minecart, which already has quite a bit in there. So I'll turn the minecart on, gets powered, goes onto the loop. Then as it's going around, it's going to start dropping coal into those hoppers, which we can see as it goes over those, it's dropping down. So it'll just keep going round and round and round, distributing the coal evenly. If the rest of the system was turned on, the coal would then be going up and into the furnace, or once that was full, staying in the dropper before it goes into the furnace. Once you've run that for a while and filled your furnaces enough, hit that button, but you do have to do it with this design at the right time. Goes back and stops. Okay, so now we'll go to the next evolution. Since we decided that we were going to try and build this on a server, we decided it was probably a good idea to rebuild the system out in the open so that we could see everything, so that if we had any problems when we went to build it, we could refer to something that we could actually see everything on, instead of having half of it buried in the ground. So we built this on a creative server. You can see that instead of just having it returning back around at about this point, I've made this section with all the sorters longer so that it's a bit neater going to the stacks of droppers, but it's still a lot of hoppers, and there's still a lot that are sort of going around corners like that. Like that one goes all the way down there and then to there. But it is pretty good in that you can see how everything works. It's all spaced out, so there's room to sort of see where the wiring is and where the hoppers are going to. It's a neater design for this, but basically still the same thing. Just got a bunch of switches for it, which I didn't have on the previous version. I just sort of had random ones. The smelting section is spread out a bit more. That's still fairly neat where it's going into it. It's just spaced out a lot and uses a lot of hoppers going to and from. The chicken farm, basically the same again. Changed slightly. Have a couple more things going into the chest room. And the loop for the coal is basically the same again, just tidied up a little bit. Instead of bringing the coal over to this side and then bringing it around, it's a bit closer. Yeah, it worked alright. Maybe a little bit faster than the last one because everything's a bit more direct. It also has the wiring for the minecart system sort of out in the open, so that you can see the points getting changed and then powering the droppers over here. And you can also see how the cobblestone that's going to be smelted, which gets dropped from this one, goes into that hopper down there, which is this sorter here. Then that comes out, and you can see that that goes through. So everything that's going to be smelted is in this stack, although one of these will be coal, which gets split off to the train track, and then the chicken gets fed in to one of the furnaces from the other end. So that was pretty good, but we figured we had to make it smaller to make it work on a server, especially if we're going to build it in survival. To make it a bit smaller, I decided that the best way to try and fit it all in was to take the width of a section of the chest room with 2 chests and a couple of spaces, which is 6 blocks, and try and put the stacks of droppers coming up in the middle of that, and then have my sorters on 2 sides, since the water can do a loop, just to make it more compact and bring it all together. So here you can see a stack of droppers, 2 water channels. Each of them has 2 sorters. Then I've spaced it out by a couple of blocks from these hoppers from those hoppers, so they're not going to get crossed up on each other, running them into the droppers. Then I've matched that up with, I've doubled it up here, but 2 sections of the chest room. One of them is a furnace section, so we've got the coal getting taken out on this side. It's all contained within the 6 blocks from here over to here. This red wall was just to sort of break the side when I built the next half. What I've done is included the furnaces in the design, so it's all getting fed into the furnaces instead of having them off to the side. So when it's switched on, you'll be able to walk through here and you can see the one that's running will have the red animation. Then I decided just to make sure that the plain section without the furnaces also fitted quite nicely. You can see it's all reasonably compact for what it's doing and having to run power to everything. To be honest, I could have run power on the inside here and moved all the redstone in a bit, which would have saved a little bit of space to the sides. But I didn't have this connected to the other halves, and I thought that maybe I could make it a little bit more compact by bringing that side closer to that side, but I needed to do it in a way that would avoid the sorters clashing with each other, because they do stick out a bit. So I discovered that by getting them really close, you could have just a one gap in between the edges of the water channels. But that got me thinking that maybe there was a better way to do it, and Dougal also put me onto a better way to power the system, just using a sticky piston, a new redstone block, and a couple of repeaters, which when they've got power going to them from a switch or torch or another power source, it's turned off. Once that power is removed, the piston retracts, but then the power from the redstone block goes through the repeater, comes around, goes through a repeater into the piston, which pushes the piston away. That means the power goes off from that one, it retracts and keeps going round and round and round, as you can see here. This one's set with a bit of delay, so it's slow at the moment, and we figured that that'd be a good way to power the entire thing instead of the more complicated circuit that I had. So then we came to my next idea, which was seeing whether I could put everything together, and instead of having the stacks going up on one side and then the sorters, maybe it'd be possible to have a sorter on one side, which, you know, it obviously fits, as you can see here, because it's as close to it as it can be. And I also worked out that even though redstone and light sources usually melt ice, having redstone running up the center in here, that one doesn't have torches in it because it wasn't going to run, but through testing that I did otherwise, having these powered off and on doesn't affect the ice here, it doesn't melt, which is what made me believe that maybe this could work. So around the 1 6 wide piece, I've managed to fit the hoppers, the droppers going up in the middle, channels taking the items to the sorters along the sides. Then I fitted in the minecart track to take out the coal. It doesn't work quite properly on this one because I tried putting 2 of them on corners and it doesn't seem to want to drop the coal there. So in the next version I moved that all over so that I had one there and one there, in places where the coal would drop through. But this was just to see if it all fitted inside the space. Then again I had the furnaces on the edges of the room, and yeah, that all worked pretty well, so I decided that I just have to build a full scale one, a bit bigger, and using colours to sort of show what everything did. And that brings us to what I'm hoping is going to be the final design. Apart from the coloured wool, of course, it'll just be stone or wood, something, when I actually build it on a survival server. I've just used the colours to show the lengths of the sections. Red is just returning the water. I've got that at the other end as well. The orange and then the blue are both 6 block long sections. The yellow is pretty much all wiring. Differentiated a couple of the sorters down here. The orange ones here are taking out the items that are going to be smelted. This side are just going up to be sorted. We've got our rail track fitted in with the hoppers in a spot that will actually let the coal go through, unlike when it was on the corners. Chicken farm is pushed in as close as I can get it. It did have some weird results. That's not a chicken farm. It did have some weird results in that until I changed this wall over here to wool, when it was glass, the droppers here that are taking the uncooked chicken up to the top would keep spitting the chicken or whatever I threw in there. They'd just spit it out here, and they were landing all around here, and I couldn't work out what was going on. So I ended up changing that, and that seemed to fix it. So yeah, it works really well. The only thing that I don't like at the moment is that it's a little bit messy trying to fit the minecart in. If I had it going out to the side, maybe over there, or out there or somewhere, it'd fit a lot nicer. I've also managed to set up the power for sending the minecart off and changing the direction of the track to run off of one switch. Just needs one to be inverted from the other. So hitting that once sends the minecart off and changes it so that it's a loop. Then, unlike the previous design where I had to time when I hit the switch, just turn it back off. Goes back around there, power's off there. So we've got our minecart docked, ready to have the coal going down into it. I did find that because everything was so compact, when I was building it, I was a bit crushed for space running some of the wiring. So some of it's going out to the sides, and then I tried to use common sources. So running the power that's doing these outside droppers is also coming around to do these ones here for the sorting. I've set it up so that not only can you use the minecart to put things in through there, you can also come into the chest room itself. You can drop them straight in there. At the moment that only works if you're using cobble only. I could set up a straight drop a bit further along, which would work for if you want it to be smelted, or if you want to have your items smelted and just shift click them out of your inventory, you can use the chest on that side. If you just want the cobblestone to come up as a chest on that side, you can shift click from your inventory. Again, the furnaces are inside. It's reasonably neat. It's about as small as I can get it to be. I haven't counted the number of hoppers that I've used, but compared to the earlier versions that we've seen, you know, going out to here, there's barely any in comparison, and especially going from the sorters to the stacks in the center, you know, one or two is all it has instead of those massive chains. So I think in terms of evolution of design, it's gone from an idea for just trying to use the new items in 1.5 to create a really simple shop to something that can do things that I never really expected anything in Minecraft to be able to do. That one isn't going anywhere at the moment because the chicken goes into this from further up. Yeah, so that's my design and where it's come from. Again, running the whole thing off of this design of, I guess it's a clock still, just powering the whole thing.